So hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick. My name's Phil, and I'm from Founders Factory, as you can see. How does this clicker work? Wow, incredible. So I'm here today to talk to you about building a startup factory. So before I begin, I'll give a little intro about what Founders Factory actually is, as probably most of you are like me 9 months ago and had absolutely no idea. So Founders Factory was founded about probably a year and a half ago by these guys, Brent Hoberman, Henry Lane Fox, and Jim Merrill. But you're probably more commonly known as the people who co-founded lastminute.com, Made, and Evolve. So what do? We launch technology startups. So we do that in a number of ways. 2 ways, actually. So through an accelerator and an incubator. Now, who's familiar with what an accelerator is and what an incubator is, and who understands the differences between the two? Because I didn't. Well, I'm going to explain. So an accelerator, all you need to know is it helps existing businesses. So we take in companies that have already been founded, they've already got a team, and they've already got some sort of a product, and they co-work with us for 6 months. And then like other accelerators, we give them hands-on operational support for our amazing team of product hackers, designers, engineers, ballet performers. We've got them. So why don't other accelerators have an operations team? Well, because other accelerators don't have this, an incubator, which is basically where we make brand new businesses. So we come up with our own ideas, we then use our team to build it, and then we spin it out into its own fully fledged business. So the final thing that makes Founders Factory really special are our corporate partners. You may have heard of some of these. So between our corporate partners, we have an audience reach of over 500 million people. And if you add them all up, they also have a market cap of about 120 billion pounds. And that's great news for us because they've invested in us. In fact, it makes us one of the largest seed rounds in European tech history. And also makes us the biggest incubator and accelerator too, until March in Europe. So why do we have corporate partners? Well, obviously, as I said, they've invested capital into us. But the most interesting part, and the thing that we're interested in, is actually they've invested into a particular sector. So EasyJet, for example, have invested in travel. L'Oreal has invested into beauty. And so what that means is they can bring their own level of expertise to our businesses that we accelerate and that we incubate. And probably one final note on our corporate partners. The interesting part of this is we are able to help them kind of rapidly launch and build products, whereas they may have struggled to do that themselves internally. So whether that's politics, lack of resource, or whatever it may be, we're able to help take their ideas and kind of build those out into businesses. And one other final note. So one cool side effect of this, we're really truly unique in actually bringing big companies together. Like we have EasyJet working with L'Oreal, Aviva working with theguardian. Like it's nuts. Like we're really bringing these big companies together. So it's pretty exciting. So what are we going to do? So the plan is to build 2 new products a year for each sector over the next 5 years. That is a lot of products and a lot of brand new businesses to build. And it's even more if you factor in the fact that actually, if you factor in the accelerator companies as well, that number doubles, well, it doesn't double, it kind of times 6, to 200 businesses. So it's a crazy, crazy scale. So that's a little intro into kind of how Founders Factory is set up and kind of what we do. I'm actually going to focus just on the incubator part, as I'm sure that's the part you guys are probably interested in. And one of the questions I get asked the most from when I talk about Founders Factory and explain what we do to people, they often ask, where do you get your ideas from, right? Where do they come from? How do you know what business to build? And further that, how do you know if they're good ideas, right? You're putting a lot of money behind one idea, and okay, we have 200 shots at them, but we need to make sure it's a good idea. So how do we do that? Well, if we look at where we're at the moment, we're currently we have 7 businesses and products in active development. None of them are launched yet, but we have 7 in active development. And we've learned a lot from them. But probably the most interesting thing that we've learned is actually, if we distill it down, there's actually 2 types of businesses we can build or we are building. And this may seem a little counterintuitive because all businesses should be solving a problem, right? But let me explain. So the first type of businesses we can build, they have a real clear, defined problem at the start. It's pretty obvious what the problem is. And the second type of business is where the problem isn't necessarily as clear, but but there's an interesting opportunity, or there's a cool bit of tech, or we've got some unique bit of insight that we don't quite know what the problem is yet, but we think there's something interesting here. So let me explain. So an example I like to use is Snapchat, right? So for those of you who aren't familiar with Snapchat, it's a really great app to make yourself look like a dog. And you can then send that picture of yourself looking like a dog to your friends, and then that picture will then self-explode, sort of like a Samsung Galaxy Note 7. Now, this isn't to say Snapchat doesn't solve a problem. It does. But if you compare it to something like Deliveroo, for example, the problem there was really clear at the start. Getting food from my favorite restaurant is hard/impossible, right? Really clear problem, whereas Snapchat, well, questionable. So do we want to make a Snapchat? Well, the answer is yes. That is to say, a product where the problems aren't immediately clear, but provide utility to people in unexpected ways. So, and it also helps that it's made lots of money. So, going back to how are we getting those good ideas? Well, it's very rare that a good idea just comes along and you have like a stroke of insight. It's very rare that happens. Even Sir Isaac Newton didn't just come up with gravity. There's a myth that he did. He didn't. It was based on his years of kind of knowledge and research that he'd done before to kind of form that idea and form that theory. So we can't rely on that, right? We need a repeatable, scalable way of generating and validating ideas over the next 5 years. So this isn't going to be a lecture. Have we built $1 billion business yet? No. But we have a really great start, we think. And we've learned a lot in the year that we've been operating, or kind of actively operating. And so all I want to do, I literally just want to talk to you about 2 products that we're building. And hopefully you maybe glean something interesting, or you may find nothing interesting at all, who knows. So that's what we're going to do. So the first business I'm going to talk about is a business called Hello Car. And the second one, it doesn't have a name yet, but we're calling it Project Thomas internally. And I've chosen these 2 businesses because they kind of capture the 2 types of businesses, the one with a clear problem and the one where the problem's a little bit more ambiguous. Okay, so Hello Car. So Hello Car started life as a media project with The Guardian. So, woo, Guardian. So The Guardian, it was interesting because The Guardian had previously owned Auto Trader, so they had some expertise in-house where they could help us with the car market. So where did this idea come from? Well, this idea initially came from one of our co-founders, Henry. And he basically came to us and said, buying a used car and selling it, it's not that great really, is it? And we went, yeah, I don't think it is that great. So how do we know it wasn't that great? Well, we did followed pretty standard product development cycle here, right? So had a look at the competition, saw what was out there. So this was the state-of-the-art Auto Trader. Yeah, they've added a mobile app, but literally it's just lipstick on a pig. Sorry if anyone's from Auto Trader. So there was some other interesting competition out there, but Auto Trader was kind of the one that we want to go after Auto Trader. So how do we find out pain points? Well, pretty standard. We sent out some surveys to our friends and our family to start with. We then took it a little bit wider and sent it out using a service called Pulfish. I don't know if anyone's used it. It's an incredible service. You can basically they'll get you an audience of people that you're interested in. You can ask them any question, right? And it's just so incredible. And you get the results back in a couple of hours. Use promo code Phil to know if they sent you. So we sent out an initial survey. And from that, we gleaned loads of little problems, right? So we took those problems and we go, okay, cool. What solutions can we come up with those problems? So I'll give you a couple of examples. So nearly everyone said that the pictures of the car were really low quality. It was really hard to kind of glean if the car was actually worth their while to go check it out. So they get there and the car's a piece of shit. So one of the ideas we had, well, why don't we have better car photography? Everyone's got decent cameras now. They've got accelerometers in them. Can we not do car 360s? Right? Can I not take the car literally for a spin? So that was one of the ideas. Arranging test drives. It's a pain, right? Can we do something better there? So these were some of the solutions, and we went wide on them, right? So there was lots of possible configurations of all the things we could have done. So, do we allow test drives? Do you go to the test drive, or does the test drive come to you? Does the seller deal with the test drive, or do we deal with the test drive? There was a million configurations just within test drives. And if we zoomed out and looked at the entire product, there was even more, right? Are they going to buy the car instantly? Are they going to buy it on finance? There was loads and loads of questions. And we wanted to know what would provide the most value to the customer. So obviously we can ask people what they think. But again, like, it's really hard to kind of get honest feedback from people. What we prefer to do is give them something and actually get them to do something and kind of prove our point. So we did that with a form of a prototype. Now, as I just mentioned, there were so many possible configurations of this product that we wanted to build in the early stage. Basically, conventional prototyping techniques weren't enough, right? We couldn't put this together in Framer because there was just so many combinations. So what we actually did with our engineers, we actually built a prototype in native iOS, and then we had something, an options file where you could basically just turn stuff off. You can't see it there at all. But we had stuff like turning off test drives, and then all the test drive UI in the app would just disappear. Or we could change the insurance provider, or we could enable pickup. So we had all these different options, and the prototype would update natively. So why do we want to do this? Well, one, it's great to take to customers and actually put in their hands and see, are they going to, is this something they're interested in, right? So that's number one. But two, for us, and especially in the early stages of our business, was actually going and getting the partners that we needed to make this business successful, or this product successful. And it was great because we could walk into meetings, hand them the app, and they could play with it, and they could use it. And then when we went to the next partner, we could change the name of the partner who we were meeting with. So it looked like we'd done all this custom work for them, and really it was just a string in this file. Great. So we went from, so you may be thinking, well, that sounds like a lot of work. And initially, it was. But everything, all those prototypes, we put together in about 3 weeks, right? So we developed our own prototyping kit internally, which we're hoping to open source soon. And it was super useful, right? So when we went to the AA and Aviva, we could show them. So we did all this, and we had this product, we had this prototype, and we had this app, but then something wasn't quite right about it, right? It kind of, I don't know, lacked a soul, for like a lack of a better word. We wanted this to be 1,000 times better than anything else, right? Everyone says they want their product to be 1,000 times better. No, we really want this to be 1,000 times better. So we needed a new way of looking at it. What if you could sell your car on Snapchat? So this is a bit of a thought experiment for us. We're like, well, what would it be like to sell a car on Snapchat? And so by framing it as this, rather than thinking we're just going to do a better auto trader, we started thinking it in an entirely new way. So what would that look like? Well, we kind of spent a little time thinking what that would look like. Called it SNAPCAR internally. So how does this work? Well, we imagined, in Snapchat, you might just point your phone at the car, and that's it. Brings back information. So this was a valuation of the car just by taking a picture of it. We contacted the DVLA, got the price back, and a bunch of other specs. I can then request that I want to sell it. Great. We'll send someone from the AA who will come and inspect the car. They'll perform a 168-point inspection on the car. So when you're buying the car, you know it's not going to explode as you pull off the driveway. So here's a little video of us on the streets trying this out. So it actually does work, actually contacts the DVLA. So we're doing some character recognition here. Goes away, and brings back the model. So this was a fully interactive prototype, actually worked. So again, we could give this to customers. They could tell if it was shit, or they could tell if it was good. Amazing. So through rapid experimentation, we could come up with a new take on an old problem. So Hello Cars now since has left our incubator, and it's been spun out into its own separate business. And it's just closed $1 million in seed funding as well, which is really, really incredible. And yeah, so that's Hello Car. So that was an example of a pretty clear problem at the start. So obviously we're called Founders Factory, and factory can sometimes have quite a negative connotation in terms of, well, it just sounds like your output's going to be the same cookie cutter thing, it's repeatable, boring. So no one's more aware of that than us. Like I said at the start, we don't want to create boring businesses or repeatable businesses. We want to create something that's really, really interesting. So we had another media business coming up with The Guardian. Again. So how were we going to get some truly inspirational ideas for this new project? Well, we did a brainstorm. So the factory got together with The Guardian, and we did a bunch of activities, like holding hands and singing Kumbaya. No. So we did a bunch of sessions on this. We tried lots of things. We even tried praying for ideas. Sorry. They didn't come. And then we went off in groups, and then we did something called a business model canvas. Who's familiar with a business model canvas here? Few. So this idea was called Dumpster, for example. No idea why it didn't go forward. When we then presented our ideas and had a discussion around them. So, how many ideas did we take forward from this brainstorm session? Yeah, none. None. So there's a million, well, there's not a million reasons. There's a few key reasons why. So the main one was feasibility and kind of timing. So we've only got 6 months to incubate these businesses. So our time has to be spent wisely. Like, we can't, I think the idea of Dumpster was that you could give it a web page and it would intelligently give you a one-sentence description of what the contents of the page was. I think Google has a hard time doing that, so we're going to leave that to them. So, blimey again. However, something interesting did come out of this. So you may be thinking, well, you had no ideas. What could be interesting out of it? And it was something kind of unexpected at the time. But it was this. It was discussions, right? We were together, talking to one another. And we brought people together who wouldn't usually be chatting. So even like, you could think, well, the Factory was there and the Guardian were there. Great, Factory and Guardian are talking. But even people within the Guardian who wouldn't usually meet, right? People from editorial and ads talking and audio talking. And out of that came this. Something really interesting, podcasts, right? So The Guardian has a lot of successful podcasts. And then it got us thinking about podcasts in general and kind of, every year you kind of hear something like this. This is going to be the year of podcasts. And every year it never really happens. Weird, huh? So why is that? So we started applying our traditional kind of product methodology to this. Well, let's go ask people. Let's go ask people and see what they say about podcasts. So we did a mass survey, and we even spoke to a bunch of people who have founded podcast businesses as well, and got some pretty good insight. So we went away and got all this insight, and we found out what the problems were, and podcasts are too long, or I have a really hard time finding them, or I want to know what my friends are listening to. So we went away and we wireframed it and prototyped it, and yeah, I mean, like, we've solved podcasting, right? Like, we've got podcasts that are under 10 minutes because people told us they're too long, so we found them short ones, and here's some scientific ones because people couldn't find specific. Again, it didn't feel right. Something was missing here. It wasn't reimagining of podcasts, it was just better podcasts, right? And we didn't want to do that. So we needed to go back and kind of rethink how we were going to tackle this problem. So whatever it is we were going to do, we knew one thing. It had to be useful to people. And so we needed people. So we launched this campaign. You can't see it back there. It's called earswanted.com. You can sign up now. Use promo code Phil. We launched earswanted.com with a very cryptic kind of, we're testing something. We don't know what this is. Are you interested? And surprisingly, a large amount of people were, which is pretty cool. So we had all these people. And then we were like, okay, now what? So traditionally, in how we were set up before, we had our incubator, and then within that 6 months, that was when we would build an entire business and spin it out. So we realized this wasn't going to work with podcasts, so we needed to rethink it. So now we have something called a pre-incubator, or prinking. And it's just, we spend more time experimenting. Around a particular thing. So how do we do that? Well, we've kind of come up with I apologize in advance, a very douchey name for it. But it kind of accurately describes kind of what we're trying to do. We call it a product hacker. So there's no rule book for kind of creating genuine inspiration. So we're in uncharted territory here. So if you look at like a standard setup and how you would kind of rapidly prototype an idea, I mean, maybe it would consist of like a product manager, a developer, and a designer. So all we're saying with a product hacker is what if that person, or maybe 2 people, could be brought together, right? So they had some shared disciplines. So why would you want to do that? Well, one, I mean, so if we go back to the traditional setup, each one of these circles, there's going to be communication, and there's stuff that's going to be lost, or there's going to be delays as one person works on something. Like, you can't work on the same thing all at once necessarily. If we're trying to bring it together, you can do that far, far quicker, right? You can do that rapidly. So we call it product hacking. So the idea behind it is that they can experiment with new tech, ideas that they have. They can take stuff that stakeholders are throwing at them, and they can kind of distill these really big ideas down into tangible little things that we can kind of look at, we can prod, we can give to people, and we can ask for feedback on, right? So what came out of this? Well, so this is our first take on reimagining podcasting. So what we ended up with was kind of moving beyond podcasting and thinking, well, actually, what if we could take on online video instead, right? Is there some halfway house between audio and video? And if you think about online video, it's a pretty weird thing, right? It's this 16 by 9 box that moves in like a linear fashion. You can't interact with it, and it's kind of like, it's a bit of a reminiscent from like TV. So can we do better? That was the brief. Can we do better than online video for certain stuff? So I use the example of Serial here. Who listens to Serial? Yes, what a shame. So the idea here was, well, what if we made the podcast a lot more visual, right? If we broke down the sections. So pretty straightforward, but making a podcast more visual is really interesting. So in Serial, they're talking about a particular case. We've got like an interactive map here. I can see where she's talking about. And kind of as the show's progressing, like each card's kind of filling up. And then as soon as she's done talking about it, it advances on to the next thing. So with Serial, for example, you can be looking at the letters. You can be looking at the evidence. You can see who's talking. It kind of adds this new level of interactivity that kind of no one else has been doing in podcasting. So that's pretty interesting. So that's just one thing that's come out of kind of this prinking. So I've run over a little bit. So that's kind of us at Founders Factory and kind of what we're up to. If you're interested in what we're up to, check us out online. I'm about, the guys down here are about, so we've got Ali, Mike, Stephen, and Kerry. If you want to stand up and just kind of like make yourself, woo! And yeah, we're hiring. Thanks.